It was an ordinary day in Los Angeles, or at least that's how everything began. Could it really be possible that a simple wedding dress could turn an entire life upside down? It may sound exaggerated, but believe it, sometimes it is in the smallest choices that fate loves to hide its greatest surprises. Ethan Harris, a successful businessman used to controlling absolutely everything around him, was about to discover that in the most unlikely way, in an unexpected encounter that would force him to face his biggest mistake from the past. What would you do if, in a single moment, everything you tried to bury deep in your memory came rushing back with an uncontrollable force? Have you ever stopped to think whether it's possible to escape the consequences of your past decisions? And more, to what extent does fate have the power to cross again the paths you once decided to separate forever? No matter how much we try to ignore or hide the past beneath new layers of success and luxury, sooner or later it returns, bringing conclusive and often painful answers. Ethan was about to understand that the past is not just a forgotten chest in the basement of our lives. It is part of who we are today. And that fate, as unlikely as it may seem, always finds a way to reveal those hidden truths. Before the story begins, subscribe to our channel and comment which city you are watching from. We want to know just how far our stories reach. That seemingly ordinary morning, Ethan parked his luxurious black car in front of the most exclusive jewelry store in Beverly Hills. At 50 years old, with carefully graying hair and always impeccably dressed in tailored suits, he exuded confidence, the same confidence that had brought him to the top of the business world. But at that moment, as he gazed at the display filled with sophisticated engagement rings, he felt an inexplicable anxiety seize his chest. When he entered the jewelry store, a faint aroma of polished wood and new leather filled his nostrils, and soon a smiling saleswoman guided him to a private room. Everything seemed part of a perfect ritual. The platinum ring with an elegant diamond that his fiancée, Olivia, would surely show off to her thousands of followers on social media had been chosen. Yet for some reason, in that very moment, Ethan felt no satisfaction at all, only a strange emptiness that had accompanied him ever since he saw the name of the designer recommended by Olivia, Charlotte Evans. Still disturbed by the coincidence, Ethan left the jewelry store, trying to convince himself that it was impossible for this to be the same Charlotte, the one he had abandoned 20 years ago in order to follow his own business ambitions. Back then, Charlotte was just a young dreamer who talked about opening her own atelier, a distant, almost unreachable dream. However, now, as he walked to his car and opened the website of the elegant atelier on his cell phone, the past seemed to re-emerge in every detail. There she was, Charlotte Evans, with the same determined green eyes, now mature and professionally accomplished. Ethan felt the world stop around him for a moment as he read the description on the page, realizing that, in some cruel and ironic way, fate was once again uniting the paths he had fought so hard to keep apart. Inside his office, Ethan tried in vain to concentrate on his daily tasks, but his mind insisted on wandering far away, always returning to the image of Charlotte's face, now clearly imprinted in his memory. He recalled perfectly the last time they had been together, more than 20 years ago, in a small cafe near Santa Monica. The sadness and disappointment in her eyes were still vivid in his memories. Ethan had chosen his career above all else, abandoning Charlotte without a second thought. Now, sitting there with his trembling hand holding a cup of cold coffee, he felt the weight of past decisions bearing down on him. Olivia continued sending messages about wedding details, oblivious to the silent storm growing within him. The next morning, the traffic seemed even more chaotic than usual as Ethan made his way to the atelier. Olivia talked animatedly beside him, recording videos for her followers and photographing every detail to document her bridal journey. Ethan could barely pay attention to what she was saying. His thoughts were fixed on the inevitable encounter that was about to occur. When he arrived in front of the elegant building on Rodeo Drive, he realized that his hands were slightly damp, something completely unusual for someone who never showed vulnerability. The classic and charming facade of the atelier perfectly reflected the essence of the woman Ethan had once left behind. Strong, elegant, timeless, and full of personality. As they entered the atelier, Ethan felt as if he had stepped through an invisible door straight into the past. Black and white photographs of stunning dresses, carefully displayed on the walls, carried Charlotte's unmistakable signature. It was exactly what he had imagined she would one day do, a perfect combination of tradition and modernity, a touch of nostalgia that Charlotte had always loved and that Ethan had never valued until that moment. Olivia was delighted, completely absorbed in every detail of that sophisticated setting, while Ethan remained motionless, observing one particular photograph, a dress that seemed to tell a story through its delicate embroidery and noble fabrics. He recognized the inspiration in the cultural traditions that Charlotte so admired, traditions he himself had disregarded in pursuit of international recognition. The sound of firm footsteps approaching through the room made his heart suddenly race, and when he looked up, there she was, Charlotte Evans, dressed in elegant attire, entirely in black, with her red hair tied up in a refined bun, and now with a few strands of silver betraying the passing years. The subtle marks on her face did not diminish her beauty. On the contrary, they seemed only to emphasize even more the strong and determined character that Ethan had secretly always admired. When their eyes finally met, Ethan felt something break inside him, 20 years of silence and distance, reduced to a single moment loaded with emotion and unspoken questions. For a brief moment, Charlotte showed surprise, but quickly regained her professional composure. "Welcome," she said in a calm, firm, and melodious voice. "I'm Charlotte Evans. You must be Olivia, right?" Then, slowly turning toward Ethan, she pronounced his name with a cutting softness, almost ironic. "And you, of course, are Ethan." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine as he heard Charlotte say his name in that so familiar yet so distant manner. Olivia smiled, completely unaware of the palpable tension filling the room. "That's right. It's a pleasure to finally meet you, Charlotte. I've followed your work on social media for so long. It's a dream to be here," the young woman said cheerfully as she greeted the stylist. Ethan watched the scene as if he were outside his own body, witnessing everything happen without being able to interfere or escape. When Charlotte gently shook Olivia's hand, Ethan couldn't help but notice one small detail. The same silver ring that she always wore on her index finger was still there, enduring the passage of time like a silent reminder of the past. Soon, Charlotte led them to the main salon, an elegantly decorated space filled with mannequins, dressed in different styles of gowns, and large mirrors reflecting every angle of the room. Olivia immediately fell in love with a dress adorned with delicate rhinestones and a voluminous tulle skirt. "This is amazing. May I try it on now?" she asked excitedly. Charlotte nodded with a professional smile, calling over an assistant to help Olivia in the fitting room. Alone now beside Charlotte, Ethan felt the tension growing even more. Every small movement she made as she adjusted fabrics and took precise measurements was watched by him with a mixture of admiration and discomfort. How could it be so hard simply to be near someone with whom he had once shared everything? The gentle voice of Charlotte abruptly brought him back to reality. "And you, Ethan, do you have any preference for your future wife's dress?" The question seemed to carry a far greater emotional weight than it appeared, causing Ethan to hesitate for a moment before answering. In that brief moment, he was taken directly back to the past, recalling the dress that Charlotte had created especially the first time she had proposed marriage. A simple dress, but full of meaning, which he had never valued as it deserved. "I trust completely in your good taste, Charlotte. You always knew how to see beauty where no one else did," he finally replied, trying to maintain a neutral tone, though feeling a pang of regret for the weight of every word. Olivia soon emerged from the fitting room, radiant in the dress she was trying on, oblivious to the silent conflict unfolding around her. "It's perfect, Charlotte, exactly as I dreamed it would be," she exclaimed, twirling in front of the mirror as she took photos for her social media. Charlotte nodded with a gentle gesture, making notes of the necessary adjustments while always maintaining an impeccably professional posture. Ethan remained silent, watching through the mirror the discreet glances Charlotte directed at him, as if she were trying to decipher something within him, something that had been hidden for 2 decades. And at that moment, Ethan felt a certainty he hadn't felt in years. He was not there by chance, and fate had much more in store for him than merely reuniting with Charlotte Evans in that elegant atelier in Beverly Hills. When they finally said their goodbyes, Charlotte handed Olivia a folder containing some preliminary sketches of the dress, scheduling a new visit to finalize the details. Ethan took a deep breath as he headed for the exit, feeling the weight of the past with every step he took. In the final moment, before crossing the door, he stopped and slowly turned back to look at Charlotte. "It was a surprise to see you again," he said, trying to sound natural, although his voice revealed a contained emotion. Charlotte held his gaze firmly, yet a slight melancholy shone in her green eyes as she calmly replied, "Life is full of surprises, Ethan. Some are sweeter than others." That phrase echoed in Ethan's mind as he accompanied Olivia to the car, realizing for the first time in years the emptiness behind the superficial perfection of his life. On the way back, Olivia chatted excitedly about all the details she would share on her social media about the visit to the atelier, unaware that Ethan was completely lost in his own thoughts. The image of Charlotte's face, her elegant posture, her expressive eyes, everything had brought back feelings he had sworn he would never feel again. How would his life be now if he had chosen differently? The question hurt because Ethan already knew the answer. He would have lived something much more genuine, but perhaps he would have had less money, less status. The cruel doubt now was, did everything he had achieved really pay off compared to what he had sacrificed? That night, alone in his luxurious penthouse, Ethan walked slowly through the dark room, holding a strong drink. Olivia had gone out to meet friends and celebrate her new phase of life, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Sitting in his favorite armchair, he reopened the atelier's page on his cell phone, scrolling through each image of the dresses designed by Charlotte. Each piece seemed to tell a story, and every story reminded him of everything he had ignored in the past. It was then that his phone vibrated with a notification. Olivia had shared photos at the atelier, and in one of them, Ethan noticed something that made his heart race. In the background of the image, there was a young apprentice helping adjust a dress on a mannequin. Ethan felt a strange knot form in his throat as he looked at her face. There was something extremely familiar in that young woman, something that went beyond a mere coincidence. Driven by a sudden anxiety, he quickly zoomed in on the image to get a better look. The young apprentice had a gentle, slight smile, expressive eyes, and loose brown hair cascading over her shoulders. A face that seemed almost a perfect copy of the young Charlotte he had once loved so many years ago. Ethan felt his heart race uncontrollably as his mind began piecing together clues he had never even imagined existed. Who was this apprentice who stirred such a disturbing feeling in him? The truth, hidden beneath years of misguided choices and unchecked ambitions, was slowly beginning to reveal itself, clearly indicating that the reunion with Charlotte was only the beginning of a journey far deeper and more transformative than he could have supposed. The next morning, Ethan barely managed to sleep, disturbed by the previous day's revelations and by the face of that young apprentice that remained fixed in his memory. He tried to concentrate on work, but no matter how many meetings he attended or phone calls he took, his thoughts always returned to that mysterious image. Who was she? Why did he feel such a strange connection with someone he didn't even know? Unable to control himself, Ethan began searching for every bit of information available about the atelier on social media, desperately looking for more images or any clue that might clear his doubts. But the more he investigated, the more uneasy he became. Every new image or post only strengthened his conviction. That apprentice had something to do with Charlotte, something he still couldn't clearly define, but which he deeply sensed. Around 3 in the afternoon, Olivia appeared at Ethan's office, agitated and visibly upset about something. "We need to talk," she announced directly, closing the door behind her. "I received some strange messages about you today on my social media. People are asking if I knew that you had already been married to Charlotte, the stylist." Ethan felt his heart stop for a moment. Until then, he had believed that his past was well buried, but apparently someone had decided to expose the truth. Olivia continued, her voice trembling with irritation and distrust. "Why did you never tell me that? How could you hide something so important?" Ethan took a deep breath before responding, understanding that there was no longer any way to escape that difficult conversation. "I was going to tell you, Olivia, but I thought it wasn't relevant. It was so long ago. It happened quickly when I was young. I never imagined it could affect the present." But Olivia did not seem convinced or willing to accept shallow explanations. "Not relevant? The stylist for my wedding dress is your ex-wife, and you don't think that's relevant?" she said, clearly upset. In that moment, Ethan realized how much he had been wrong, trying to hide the past, and even more, underestimating how it could affect his current life. The conversation ended abruptly, with Olivia leaving the office indignantly, leaving Ethan alone once again with a mixture of guilt and worry. His house of cards, built on perfect appearances, was beginning to collapse rapidly. And for the first time in decades, he realized he no longer had absolute control over anything in his life. Determined to try to resolve at least part of the situation, Ethan decided to return to the atelier that same afternoon, even without an appointment. He needed to speak directly with Charlotte, to clarify everything that was happening, and to ask directly about the young apprentice who had so unsettled him. When he arrived at the atelier, he once again felt that familiar pit in his stomach as he opened the door and realized that Charlotte was alone, focused intently on working on a dress. She looked up when she saw him enter, clearly surprised by his unexpected presence. For a few seconds, they both remained silent, sizing each other up with a mix of caution and curiosity. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "We need to talk, Charlotte. No masks, no excuses. I think it's high time we clear a few things up." Charlotte took a deep breath, calmly put away the measuring tape and pins she had been holding, and then indicated that Ethan sit on an elegant sofa in a corner of the atelier. "If you're here to apologize, Ethan, it's already too late," she said firmly, though without bitterness in her voice. Only a certain sadness he could not ignore. Ethan nodded, fully understanding the weight of her words, but gently insisted, "I didn't come here just for that. I want to understand, Charlotte. Who is that young apprentice who works with you? She looks a lot like you did when you were young. I can't stop thinking about it ever since I saw her in the Photos. Charlotte fell silent for a moment, as if carefully choosing the words she would say next. Finally, after taking a deep breath, she slowly moved toward an old wardrobe in the corner of the room and retrieved a small wooden box, which Ethan immediately recognized as an object he had himself purchased many years ago during a trip to Mexico on the honeymoon they never had. With trembling hands, Charlotte opened the box and took out an envelope yellowed with time, handing it to Ethan. "I wrote this a few months after you left. I never had the courage to send it. I thought you didn't deserve to know, but perhaps I was wrong," she said in a low voice, choked with emotion. Ethan's heart pounded as he carefully took the envelope. The letter appeared to have been opened and read countless times, its words written in ink that had faded slightly with time. His eyes quickly scanned the lines, and with each word he felt as if an abyss were opening beneath his feet. "I was pregnant when you left," he murmured, incredulous, unable to hide the shock on his face. "Why didn't you tell me, Charlotte? I had the right to know." The designer looked at him, serious yet with eyes shining with repressed emotion built up over decades. "Right. How was I entitled to a better explanation than a simple note saying you needed to pursue your dreams? I had dreams too, Ethan, and you destroyed them all with your departure." The heavy silence that followed was broken by the soft sound of footsteps. Entering the atelier, the young apprentice, the same one who had so disturbed Ethan, appeared in the doorway, carrying fabrics and sketches, pausing in surprise upon noticing the businessman's presence once again. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt," she said with a timid and confused expression. Ethan couldn't take his eyes off her. In that moment, there was no doubt left. She was, without a shadow of a doubt, the daughter he had never known he had. Charlotte, noticing the emotion on Ethan's face, broke the tension with a serene maternal tone. "Sophia, I think it's time you finally meet your father." Sophia stood still, as if needing a few extra seconds to process what she had just heard. Her eyes, so similar to Charlotte's, silently searched her mother's face for answers, while Ethan, still shaken by the sudden revelation, felt a whirlwind of emotions impossible to define. "My father?" Sophia whispered almost inaudibly, taking a hesitant step toward Ethan. For the first time, he felt the true weight of what he had lost because of the choices made so many years ago. There, before him, stood a young woman full of life, talent, and dreams. Dreams of which he had never been a part, nor even imagined existed. His chest tightened with a deep pain, a genuine regret that could no longer be ignored. Charlotte, sensing the vulnerability in the room, moved closer to Sophia with delicacy, gently touching her arm in a maternal protective gesture. "I'm so sorry, Sophia. I should have told you sooner, but when your father left, I was completely lost, burdened with debt, not knowing what tomorrow would bring. I only wanted to protect you from it all." Ethan lowered his eyes, feeling crushed by guilt upon hearing those words. The comfortable, luxurious life he had built now seemed insignificant compared to the battles Charlotte had fought alone while raising a daughter without any support. Sophia took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. "I always wondered about him. I always imagined what the day we'd meet would be like. I just never expected it to be like this." As the young girl discreetly wiped away a tear streaming down her face, Ethan mustered the courage to step forward, closing the distance between them. In a trembling voice, he tried to express everything he felt at that moment. "Sophia, I can't turn back time. I can't correct what I did. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. But, if you allow me, I would like to try and make up a little for everything I lost and everything I took from both of you." The sincerity in his tone was palpable, something rare from a man used to living surrounded by appearances and superficialities. Sophia looked at him intently for a few seconds, then smiled sweetly and understandingly, just as Charlotte used to smile 20 years ago. "I think I've already wasted too much time imagining what could be. I don't want to waste any more time now. I want to get to know you, to know who you really are, without idealizations or exaggerated expectations." Charlotte watched the exchange in silence, aware of the emotional complexity this reunion represented for all of them. After a few moments, she took a deep breath and spoke softly to both. "Perhaps it's time to start over, without guilt, without holding on to past resentments. A new chance for all of us." Ethan and Sophia exchanged a look filled with hope and acceptance, recognizing in those words the truth that, despite everything they had experienced, apart, life was now offering them a unique and unexpected opportunity to rebuild something precious. But what they did not know at that moment was that out there, the consequences of their secrets were beginning to emerge publicly, bringing even greater challenges to the fragile bond they were about to build. In the following days, the news of Ethan's reunion and his past began to spread rapidly, gaining prominence on social media and in newspaper headlines. Olivia, still deeply resentful, decided to use her digital influence to expose the story from her perspective, sparking a true wave of comments and public judgment. For Ethan, who had spent decades carefully cultivating an impeccable public image, it was devastating. Every accusatory message, every criticism of his past choices felt like a precise, relentless blow to his reputation. For the first time, he felt the true meaning of the consequences of his actions, a harsh reality he had always tried to escape. The impact of these revelations also hit Charlotte's atelier. Suddenly, her workspace, once calm and focused on artistic creation, became the target of speculation and gossip. Clients began cancelling orders, business partners hesitated to renew contracts, and Sophia found herself in the midst of a media whirlwind that threatened to shatter her newly discovered dreams. Ethan, feeling responsible for the ensuing chaos, offered immediate financial help, but Charlotte firmly refused. "You can't fix everything with money, Ethan. Some things have to be faced in another way, honestly and courageously. We need to show people who we really are, without masks or lies." Sophia, still confused by the recent turmoil in her life, felt torn between the desire to protect her mother and the natural curiosity to know her father better. Every day, she saw in Ethan's face a man growing increasingly vulnerable and human, very different from the powerful, distant figure she had initially imagined. Gradually, she understood that life isn't made up only of clear-cut mistakes and successes, but of complex decisions taken under difficult circumstances. One quiet night at the atelier, as Charlotte was finishing a dress for an old client, Sophia sat beside Ethan and gently asked, "Do you regret the choices you made, Dad? If you could go back, would you do things differently?" Ethan took a deep breath, looking at her with tenderness. "I deeply regret having abandoned both of you, but perhaps if I hadn't made so many mistakes, I would never have learned what is truly important in life." At that very moment, Charlotte watched from afar, noticing how father and daughter were slowly beginning to build a relationship that seemed improbable just days before. Even in the face of so many difficulties, a small flame of hope rekindled in her heart. Perhaps it was possible, after all, to transform such a painful situation into something genuinely beautiful and meaningful. However, before she could allow herself to fully embrace that hope, her phone rang with news that made her feel as if the ground had vanished from under her feet. A major sponsor of the atelier had just cancelled the partnership permanently, claiming that the scandal involving Ethan could harm the brand's reputation. Once again, Charlotte felt trapped by the decisions of the past, realizing clearly that despite all their goodwill, their journey toward redemption was far from over. Faced with this new crisis, Charlotte gathered her strength to speak frankly with Ethan about the future. On a cold afternoon, they sat together on the small back balcony of the atelier, a simple space decorated with plants she had carefully tended since the location's inauguration. Charlotte sighed deeply before beginning. "I know you want to help, Ethan, but everything that's happening has a very clear origin, our past decisions. I can't allow Sophia to suffer the consequences of that." Ethan nodded slowly, understanding exactly what she meant. "I'm going to step back," he said with palpable sadness in his voice. "Perhaps it's better if I remove myself from the picture for a while. Let things cool down." Sophia, who had been listening discreetly from the other side of the door, felt her heart sink upon hearing those words. Impulsively, she opened the door and approached them, speaking with determination. "You two were apart for 20 years because of pride and fear. Now that you're finally here together, you can't simply repeat the same mistakes. What we have today isn't perfect, it's true, but it's real, and that is worth more than any reputation or external judgment." The young woman's words left both of them speechless for a few moments. The maturity with which Sophia faced the entire situation even surprised Charlotte, who felt proud of how strong and wise her daughter had become. Inspired by his daughter's attitude, Ethan decided to face the situation with courage and humility. In the following days, he publicly opened up on his social media, sharing an honest account of his mistakes, regrets, and the lessons learned from reuniting with Charlotte and Sophia. The post quickly went viral, generating a great wave of solidarity and reflection on second chances and forgiveness. For the first time, Ethan felt that his influence was being used for something genuine and important, something that transcended superficiality and truly touched people's hearts. Gradually, public opinion began to shift, and the atelier once again received support from former clients and partners who admired that courage and authenticity. The movement initiated by Ethan also had an unexpected impact on Olivia, who for the first time felt the weight of her own actions when she realized how her behavior had affected so many people. In a surprising gesture, she decided to return to the atelier to speak personally with Charlotte, bringing with her a humility she had never shown before. When they met, she confessed in a soft voice, "I never imagined that a real story with mistakes and imperfections could be so powerful. I was immature and irresponsible in how I handled everything, and I'm truly sorry." Charlotte, surprised by Olivia's attitude, responded with kindness and wisdom. "Sometimes we need to make mistakes to realize who we truly are and what really matters. The most important thing is how we react after our mistakes." That unexpected dialogue marked a turning point, indicating that the story, which had begun with misunderstandings and deep hurt, could become a powerful example of transformation, respect, and reconciliation. The following weeks were a period of rebuilding for everyone involved. With the unexpected support from social media, Ethan found a way to redefine his career by launching social projects aimed at empowering young entrepreneurs, using his experience and connections to generate a positive impact. For the first time in his professional life, he felt fulfilled not by money or status, but by the human value of his work. Meanwhile, Charlotte's atelier prospered again, attracting a wave of new clients drawn not only by the beauty of its dresses, but by the story of overcoming obstacles and authenticity that now accompanied its brand. During that period, Sophia became a fundamental link in the definitive union of the family. She split her time between learning with her mother at the atelier and accompanying Ethan on his social projects, discovering a new connection with her father that had once seemed impossible. The three of them together formed an unlikely and powerful team, capable of overcoming prejudices, judgments, and difficulties, thanks to the sincerity with which they faced their own imperfections. Their journey inspired ordinary people who also face similar dilemmas, proving that it is possible to start over even after mistakes that seemed irreparable. One day, during a quiet afternoon at the atelier, Ethan appeared carrying an old box filled with carefully preserved memories from the time he and Charlotte had spent together in their youth. Sitting together on the floor of the room, they began opening old photographs, unsent letters, and small objects laden with meaning. Holding one of the photos, Ethan said emotionally, "You know, Charlotte, for years I ran from these memories because it hurt too much to see what I had lost. Now I realize that running was my biggest mistake. Accepting that our stories have flaws and pain is what allows us to grow." Charlotte smiled softly, nodding silently as she realized that they were finally healing wounds that had remained open for decades. Sophia watched the moment discreetly, capturing with her eyes that unique instance between her parents. She understood that she was witnessing something rare and precious, true reconciliation based on genuine forgiveness and acceptance. She then decided to discreetly record that moment with a photo taken on her cell phone, immortalizing that deep and meaningful reunion. Later, when she posted that image accompanied by an emotional text about forgiveness and new beginnings, it once again generated a wave of affection on social media, proving that people longed for real, human stories filled with learning, far beyond superficial appearances. As the atelier grew stronger each day, Charlotte decided to host a special event to celebrate the new phase. She planned every detail carefully, transforming the space into a welcoming place where clients and partners could feel the true essence behind every dress. Ethan, involved in the organization, suggested something that surprised Charlotte: to create a special collection inspired by their story, revealing the transformative power of forgiveness and second chances. Although initially hesitant, Charlotte realized that this was the perfect opportunity to show that beauty and authenticity can go hand in hand, and she accepted the idea with renewed enthusiasm. The day of the event arrived, and the atelier was completely packed. Sophia, now confident and secure in her role as the apprentice and heir to her mother's talent, moved through the space, explaining to the visitors the concept behind the displayed dresses. Among the guests were journalists, influencers, former business partners, and even Olivia, who had become a great supporter after understanding the true meaning of that story. As Charlotte spoke emotionally about the journey they had traveled up to that moment, Ethan watched with admiration, realizing that the strong and talented woman before him was exactly the one he had once loved, but now with an even more impressive maturity and strength. After the speech, Ethan gathered his courage and slowly approached Charlotte, gently taking her hands in front of everyone. Silence fell over the room as all eyes watched curiously what was about to happen. With a firm voice full of emotion, Ethan declared, "Charlotte, 20 years ago I made the biggest mistake of my life by leaving you behind. Today, in front of all these people, I want to ask you something that perhaps I don't deserve, but that I deeply desire. Will you marry me again, this time for the right reasons, for true love, and for the family that we can finally rebuild together?" Charlotte felt tears slowly roll down as she nodded emotionally, softly replying, "Yes, Ethan. Let's write a new story." Warm applause echoed throughout the atelier as Sophia watched the scene with tears in her eyes. Finally, feeling the full, genuine happiness of having her family reunited. At her side, Olivia smiled and whispered, "You know, Sophia, your mother was right. The most beautiful stories are the imperfect, real, and human ones. Today, I learned that." The event became a celebration not only of the professional and emotional recovery of the atelier, but above all of the human capacity to forgive, grow, and start over, even in the face of the toughest situations. That night, every person present took away a powerful lesson. It is never too late to face the past, correct mistakes, and create something new and deeply true. The preparations for the wedding advanced rapidly, guided by genuine joy and the shared desire to create an authentic and memorable moment. Ethan and Charlotte opted for a simple ceremony, but one full of important symbolism for the story they now embrace together. They decided to get married right in the atelier, transforming that space, witness to so many emotions, into a symbol of their personal and familial reconstruction. Sophia actively participated in every detail, carefully creating Charlotte's dress and ensuring that every element was connected to the traditions and family roots that had long been ignored. As the wedding day approached, Ethan felt increasingly fulfilled. The arrogant and superficial man of before had completely disappeared, replaced by someone more sensitive, humble, and aware of his own flaws. His relationship with Sophia grew immensely during this period, and he finally understood the true meaning of being a father, not just as a financial provider, but as someone who supports, accompanies, and learns with his children at every stage of life. For the first time, Ethan did not fear the future, nor did he feel the need to hide behind a perfect image. Now he had something far more valuable: authenticity, acceptance, and a family united by genuine love. On the eve of the wedding, Olivia once again surprised everyone by visiting the atelier with a special gift, a small photo album documenting the recent journey of Ethan, Charlotte, and Sophia, including some images of the social projects led by Ethan. As she handed it over, she said emotionally, "I want you to know that I have truly learned so much by watching you. Today, I understand that there is no greater perfection than living with truth and courage." That simple gesture deeply moved both Ethan and Charlotte, showing that even after the greatest conflicts and misunderstandings, it is possible to build bridges of empathy and understanding. The next morning, the atelier was beautifully decorated for the ceremony. Delicate flowers adorned the space, and soft music filled the air, creating a welcoming and deeply emotional atmosphere. Ethan, dressed with elegance and simplicity, waited anxiously at the makeshift altar while Sophia walked beside him, smiling proudly at the father who had finally found his place in the family. When Charlotte appeared, radiant in the dress specially created by her daughter, every guest held their breath, admiring not only the physical beauty of the moment, but above all, the beauty of the journey these three had taken, from abandonment through the pain of separation to the fullness of forgiveness. As Charlotte slowly walked toward Ethan, each step seemed to reaffirm everything they had experienced until that moment. It wasn't just a wedding, it was a genuine pact of reconstruction, a commitment based on acknowledged mistakes and lessons learned. When they came face to face, Ethan gently took Charlotte's hands, looking into her eyes with true emotion for the first time in decades. As they exchanged their vows, their voices trembled slightly, not out of nervousness, but from the deep awareness of the road they had traveled. "Charlotte, today I promise to be the man I should have been 20 years ago. I promise to love you, support you, and cherish the family you built with such strength and courage," Ethan said, with discreet tears rolling down his face. Charlotte responded in a firm voice filled with tenderness, "Ethan, today I promise to accept the man you have become, and I promise to continue building our life with honesty, respect, and true love." When they exchanged rings amid the emotional applause of the guests, Sophia watched the scene with deep happiness, recognizing in that moment the incredible power that forgiveness and love have to transform lives. The atelier A tear, setting for so many stories and emotions, now became a permanent symbol of a new hope, of second chances that had been fully embraced. Ethan and Charlotte, finally reunited by fate in such an unlikely way, showed everyone present that it is never too late to confront past mistakes, to acknowledge flaws, and to seek genuine reconciliation. After the ceremony, while the small celebration continued with soft music and warm laughter, Sophia approached her parents, holding both of their hands. She then smiled affectionately and said with surprising wisdom, "You know, I believe our story is living proof that the greatest difficulties can give rise to the most beautiful moments. Thank you for never giving up on trying again." In that moment, Ethan and Charlotte clearly realized that everything they had endured had brought them exactly to that moment of fulfillment, true happiness, and emotional maturity. Finally, they understood that fate, as complex and painful as it had been, was not against them. It had been carefully preparing them for that unique moment of redemption. Frase del dia. Sometimes the past doesn't return to punish you, but to give you the chance to do everything differently and better. If this story moved you in any way, leave a comment telling us what touched you the most. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, turn on notifications, and comment which city you are watching from. Your participation is very important for us to keep telling stories that touch the heart.